From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back. Dr. Jason here at Dental Lighthouse Podcast. Super excited about my guest today. I have a fourth-year dental student from Ohio State, and he's got probably more experience when it comes to podcast listening and podcast consumption than I do. We were just talking a little off air about how he's been consuming dental podcasts since he was in high school, which is crazy to think about because the stuff that I was doing in high school, I probably can't even say on a family rated podcast. But I'm really excited about my guest today, fourth year dental student. He's just going to unpack some questions that he has about what are the best next steps for him. And the hope is that this conversation can really help a lot of fourth year dental students and maybe some people that are in their residencies just try to figure out how to navigate these waters in terms of becoming a great professional. So super excited to have soon to be Dr. JD Foltz on the program. Welcome, JD.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
I'm excited. I'm really excited to kind of unpack your journey and to get into some content that can help hopefully you and some other people as well. So just why don't you give our listeners a little bit of context on where you're coming from and how you got to where you are right now, and then we'll go from there.
For sure. Well, first things first, it's not uncommon for people to say that, it's crazy that I was listening to podcasts in high school, but I think that a lot of, the doctors that I meet, we were talking off air, you're turning 50 soon. Podcasts didn't exist when you were in high school. So, it's easy for you to say, oh, that's so impressive, or that's crazy that you were doing that. But to me, it's just like I knew what I wanted to do, and the content and the resources are so easily accessible now. And I really try to encourage all my friends to get into it too. Because it's just something when you're doing nothing else on your way to work, driving around. I'm sure you would have done the same thing if you had the opportunity. So I promise I'm nothing special. I was doing all the same things that you said that you definitely weren't doing in high school too. I just happened to listen to a podcast in my free time while I was a janitor. So nothing special there. I'm nothing important. But in terms of like my journey, I realized early on, kind of towards high school, I was going into the dental profession, and just kind of the way I approach things is if I'm going to do it, I want to be all in and I want to be the best at it. So I knew if I was going into dental school, I wanted to have a game plan. I like to have plans for things, keeps me on track. That way I'm not wasting time and energy in other venues. Time and our energy is kind of our most important resources. So I like to utilize them the best that I can. And, I started listening to the Bulletproof Dental Practice podcast. If anyone else has heard of that one, another great one. And just early on, they had a lot of great stuff talking about practice ownership and the business of dentistry that really started to get me excited about kind of the possibilities of what I could do. So, I stuck with the program of learning more, listening to podcasts like the Dental Success Network group and all that with Dr. Costas. And, now I'm a fourth year dental student, and I've just been continuing to try and consume the content and really try to practice the things that they talk about, all the principles, and then setting myself up that, from the day that I graduate, that I'm ready to go. I'm as capable as I can be day one. I know I won't be. People say that you graduate with just enough skills to be dangerous. So I do understand that. But hopefully I'll be dangerous for as short a time as possible. And yeah, like my big thing is I'm really interested in practice ownership. I think that's a great thing about dentistry, and a big part of the reason why I got into it was, being your own boss that everyone says. And I have learned there's a lot more to it than that. Being your own boss does not mean that you sit on your ass and do nothing all day, which is what some people think the dentists do. Unfortunately, you don't just sit around and make money. But that's kind of what I'm interested in. I feel like that's at this point what I'm uniquely suited to do, just because of how much time I've spent in this realm learning. So I guess that's enough about me. I'm not trying to ramble.
No, I think that's going to really help our listeners just have some context as to your situation. And before we go any further, I will agree with you that when I was your age, or in high school, but a little younger, I wasn't listening to podcasts simply because they weren't available. So I appreciate you reminding me how old I was. I was busy building, subwoofer boxes and putting metal CDs into my six disc changer and just jamming out to that. So I wish I would have had podcasts, but instead I was blasting Metallica and Nirvana and stuff like
Hey,
that.
Metallica
So
is great too. Don't get me wrong. And you know what? I appreciate you putting the podcast out there because I have been listening. I just got exposed to your stuff after the summit. I thought you had a great lecture. I already told you that, but I was sitting with my friend Arthur. Shout out to Arthur if he listens to this. But I was like, this guy gets it. This dude knows what he's talking about. So if anyone else is listening to this podcast, I'm telling you, Dr. Jason knows what he's talking about. This guy's the man. So thank you for putting this content out there. It really makes it a lot easier for guys like me to try and get things done quicker. So thank you.
I appreciate you saying that. You make enough mistakes, you tend to figure it out, and that's definitely been my journey. As far as your situation, man, it's awesome that you have basically the whole world in front of you, right? There's so many things you can do and so many choices that you have. Um, in an effort to kind of create a little bit of um, boundaries, for lack of a better term, let me suggest that we could really talk about three different buckets, right? We could talk about the clinical bucket, which is, what should we ultimately pursue from a clinical skill set? We could talk about the business ownership bucket, which is, what are the skills that you're ultimately going to need in order to run a successful business from the perspective of numbers, collections and overhead and EBITDA and profitability. And then I think a third and less talked about bucket, but one that, in my opinion, is arguably the most important, is the leadership or communication or emotional intelligence bucket. Unfortunately, I've been exposed to way too many dentists that have amazing hands and do some unbelievable clinical dentistry, but couldn't talk to, my dog, and don't get patients to buy in, don't get patients to say yes, can't lead people, and they'll never be nearly as successful as they had the capabilities of being. So, if we're going to use that framework, if we're going to say, okay, what are the three things that JD can pursue? Or obviously you're going to pursue all three, but what's most important? What should we pursue next? Let's look at it from the lens of, the clinical dentistry bucket, the practice ownership bucket, and the leadership communication bucket. So with that framework, JD, where do you think you're at right now? Where do you think you need to go? What's most important for you to do over the next year or so?
For sure. Well, I think I'll just try and I'll respect your order. We'll go kind of one, two, three. I'd say clinically right now, I'm not planning to specialize. I'm really interested in bread and butter dentistry. Um, I I really respect what specialists do, and the more that I have practiced dentistry, the more I understand how much it really takes to do those specialist procedures. And if I do ever venture into those, I feel like I want to truly be a master at them and truly be able to dedicate the time towards that. But right now, I'm just looking at bread and butter dentistry, crowns, bridges, basic endo, uh, restorative, and really just focusing on really being a master at that. Because I feel like sometimes it gets poo-pooed on that you're not a specialist, and therefore a general dentist is less than a specialist. But class twos are hard. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe that's just my opinion, but I think class twos are tough. And, doing good work there, doing good crown preps, like that's nothing to scoff at, being able to do good endo for a community that needs it. Um, those are kind of my clinical goals. And I feel like I'm working towards those. But I also wonder, if my goal is more towards the ownership side of things in the business, how deep do I want to dive into that? Because I think that you do need to be, I'm just an all in or all out kind of guy. And I feel like I would struggle to do both of those things at once, which is why I'm more interested in just bread and butter for the moment. And then at some later point, I could pivot, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I like that, right? So, and I think that's a good, realistic place to be where, um, maybe as you know, if you listen to the podcast, I kind of think about goal setting in a 3-year time window, right? So if we're going to look at this clinical bucket and where do you want to be in 3 years, I think you hit it right on the head. Like you want to be continuing to do great clinical work when it comes to restorative dentistry. You want to be a little bit more efficient. It can't take you all morning to do, a quadrant of two surface fillings. You want to be competent at anterior and premolar endo. I'm sorry, yeah, anterior and premolar endo. Maybe molar endo if that's what interests you. Maybe not. And then from my perspective, I would encourage you to become competent at taking out a tooth predictably, grafting it, maybe
Yeah.
a immediate implant. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if you can learn that skill set, and you can become good at it and efficient at it, you're going to be really, really busy with plenty of dentistry to do. So I think that's a really good goal. You have to always timestamp goals. I think, from my perspective, again, knowing that I like to look at them in 3-year windows, that would be my goal for you. Like that would be like really efficient at restorative dentistry, do high quality dentistry, get efficient at anterior and premolar endo, be able to take out a tooth atraumatically, graft it, place an immediate implant, and then call it a day. Now, if your vision changes in 3 years, then perfect. Reset your goals in 3 years. But for the next 3 years, I think that's a really, really good goal.
Yeah. So I think that's where I'm at. And I guess my question would be in terms of where I feel like I could improve. I feel like a lot of it is speed and also just I feel like I could be better at extractions. Where do you feel like I can start to get better at something like that? Is it just practice? Because at this point, I've done about 50 fillings, I've done a couple root canals, and I've done a couple crowns, and that's kind of been my third year of dental school. So it's I know it's hard to be fast at this point. Is it just going to private practice and just doing it? Is that how I get better?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think that leads to another question or in the clinical bucket is, what should we be doing next year? And again, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. So what are the options? The options are, some type of residency, which I think you and I talked about is not of interest to you. It could be an associateship, either at chain DSO where you could quote unquote get plenty of at bats and become more efficient. So that's the advantage there, especially if you think that it's only going to be maybe like a 12-month thing. The disadvantage of working for some of these DSOs is it's a good way to develop bad habits if you don't have enough self-regulation, which I know you do. But that's always a side effect of someone that's someone that's leading you saying more, more, more. We need more. We need more. We need more. And then all of a sudden you have to develop bad habits in order to produce more. And then obviously, what I would consider like the ideal scenario is you going to work for someone as an associate that's been out for maybe 10 years or so, that's open to mentorship, open to being honest with you, giving you enough patience, enough things to keep busy, but also keeping you accountable to making sure that you're doing what's best by the patient and you're doing good clinical dentistry. So those are typically some of the choices that you have. Have you decided which way you're leaning?
So I actually, at this point, do have a job lined up in Texas. It's with like small. I don't want to say small, but it's actually a group about the size of yours, very
Okay.
similar. So I'm friends with the doctor that owns that practice. I think they have 9 locations right now,
Hmm.
similar to where you're at, I believe.
Yeah.
So it would be a very similar to an environment to like working with you. He's been a good mentor to me. I've known him for about 2 years. Always happy to, talk to me about any questions I have. And kind of guide me clinically. So I feel like a lot of the stuff I'm saying could be kind of him coming out through me, just the things we've talked about. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? So I do think that's the best of both worlds. Someone that's part of a group, so you get to learn from other providers, but maybe has some guardrails on quality of care and has a certain level of quality and efficiency that they insist on. So that could be a great scenario for you. Obviously, taking hands-on CE would also make you as efficient as possible. One of the ones that I constantly recommend is my good friend, Dr. Aaron, Monday Morning Dentistry. He's got some great weekend courses that deal specifically with extractions and endo. That bread and butter stuff that new dentists, in my opinion, should be competent and efficient at. The all on X stuff and all those fancy things are awesome. But if you're a new dentist in a new practice and you're just looking to keep busy, being able to take a tooth out and being able to do endo are two things that would be really, really great to be able to accomplish. Okay,
Is
so
that Dr. Nicholas?
yes, yes,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. I would
yeah,
definitely be interested in that. I didn't know he had anything like that.
he's awesome. He's got weekend courses pretty much all over the country. Um, and I've sent a number of my doctors to his courses. He's actually come up and spoken in my offices to my associates, and we've completely adopted his endodontic technique just based on the ease and the predictability of it. So it's been
Cool.
great.
I'd love to talk to you about that a little bit offline. Probably not relevant for the podcast, but maybe we could follow up on that.
Yeah, for sure. So the next bucket, business ownership. Where are you at with that? Where do you feel like you're currently at, and where do you want to get to?
So I would say currently, I'm a dental student, so it's tough. Not a lot of opportunities, but I'm doing what I can. Kind of, if we work it backwards, I like to reverse engineer this kind of stuff. So really setting a goal, knowing where I want to be, and then figuring out the steps backwards. So my overall goal would be similar to kind of what you do and the mentor that I'm hoping to join with in about a year. You know, small to medium sized group practice when compared to like a DSO. Saying 7 to 9 locations is small might sound silly to some people, but like that kind of group size, and then probably multiple locations with multiple doctors working towards that. And really, my goal is to create a group where I'm able to, my success is predicated on the success of others, and empowering other people to be kind of the best versions of themselves. And that I'm able to kind of go to work because I want to, not because I have to. Which, if all that plays out, I'll be a very happy man. And I know that would be a very fortunate and blessed position to be in that not many people can do or have, but that's kind of what I'm working towards. So where
Yeah,
am I at? I think it's just learning all the basics from guys like you, guys like other mentors, listening to podcasts. I feel like I'm ahead of the curve, but until you actually get a chance to implement it, it's hard to know for sure where you're at, gauging it. For me, I feel like a lot of it, I have learned a lot of the technical sides of patient communication and leadership, but also there's always more to learn about the finances and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Right. So you have a little bit of clarity, and again, you have permission to change. But at this point in your life, you're thinking, a small to medium sized group. Let's call it 7, 8 locations, and it sounds like you're looking for something that eventually will allow you to not necessarily be away from the chair clinically, but give you the option to be away from the chair clinically if you truly
Correct.
decide that that's what you want. And that's what I
Yeah.
have now. And I absolutely love it. I was a clinician for 20 years, and now I really get a lot of joy. It gets me motivated to get out of bed to mentor my younger doctors and help them become better clinicians so they don't have to go to all of this hands-on CE to ultimately get to that point. So that's what fills up my cup now. And I didn't know that's what I wanted 25 years ago when I was in your position, but it just over time that kind of came to fruition. So I love that goal for you. I will tell you that um, just again, I'm biased probably, but from my perspective, the numbers are the easy part. Understanding revenue, understanding what each doctor hygienist needs to produce, understanding the productivity per employee. Those are things that can be taught and easily understood. And in a webinar an all-day class or something like that. The biggest hurdle for me in terms of leading an organization with 150 employees is the leadership component. It's being able to communicate not only to my own leaders, which I have about 20 in our organization, but trying to get them to become great leaders too. That's where for me, it's gotten hard. And I feel like I'm getting better at it every day. But it's one thing, and I can tell JD, like you just come across as a good leader, a good communicator, and I have no doubt that you'll ultimately be very successful from a
I
communication and
appreciate that,
leadership
Jason.
perspective. But where it gets hard from my perspective is, okay, how do you coach up the next level of leadership on your accountability chart or your org chart, whatever you want to call it? Because
Yeah.
your success is ultimately going to be predicated on how they do with their leadership and so on down the line. So these docs that have one, mega practice, like that's awesome. But it's just been my perspective that it's a little bit easier to be a leader there because you're always kind of around when you have 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, 20 locations, and your success is ultimately determined by how good of a leader is in each of those locations. Um, that's a hell of a lot harder from my perspective and based on my experience.
I think I lost like the last 15 seconds that you were saying. You were talking about doctors at one location. Sorry, my internet went out for a second
Oh,
there, but I think
no,
I'm back.
no worries. I was just saying, like, from my perspective, it's a little bit easier to run like one mega practice because you as the leader would most likely be always on site. So you could
Yeah.
always kind of put out a fire or what have you. Where it really gets difficult, again, just based on my own lived experience, is when you have multiple locations, 6, 7, 8, and you can't be everywhere at once from a leadership perspective. So you really need to double down on the decisions and the leadership capabilities of the people that you're going to have in those locations as the designated leaders. Now, it could be a partner dentist, it could be an associate dentist, it could be the office manager, depending on the model that you're trying to cultivate. But that's for me, that's where when I started to figure that out, when I started to empower other people to become great leaders, so everything wasn't getting funneled through me or to me, that's when things really started to take off for us.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like that's really the conversation I wanted to have with you a little bit more because I feel like as I have listened to, hundreds of hours of podcasts, been to multiple different conferences all across the country, I hear the same thing from guys that are in your position. It's always a very similar answer to what you just gave. And I'm looking for like, the what's that book that oh, what was it? How to think and grow rich, right? Kind of,
Napoleon
they
Hill.
talked to yeah, exactly. He talked to all the richest people in the country and he said, "What's the common denominator?" And I feel like
Hmm.
everything that you're talking about is the common denominator. And I guess that is kind of the conversation I wanted to dive in a little bit more. Because there's this quote that I have that I think you'll appreciate. It's kind of summarizing what you're saying is a good leader creates more followers, a great leader creates more leaders. And that's kind of where I'm trying to get to. So I
Hmm.
don't know if we can dive in on that. I have a couple questions about that in general, if you don't mind, or
Yeah, yeah. No, I now that we're kind of on the same page with that, I can share some information and wisdom. But if you have specific questions that you want to unpack, let's start there.
sure. I mean, one thing that I did want to discuss with you, and I did a little bit of prep work for this, is I feel like the word leadership gets tossed around a lot, or leader. And I just wanted to talk to you about what you think actually a leader is and kind of a definition of their role and what a leader really is. Because I think it's easy to say, oh, I'm a leader and I create more leaders. Oh, leadership this, leadership that. To me, some of the things that I have is I feel like a leader creates goals and standards for others. They create a system for others to become the most capable version of themselves. They put the right butt in the right seat. I know you're talking to, I heard that on one of your other pods, a topic that I really love. And then it really just comes down to the leader is ultimately a decision maker. whether they make all the decisions or some decisions, they are a decision maker. So to me, that's kind of what a leader is. And I don't know how you feel about that, if you have a different definition.
Yeah, I think there's tons of definitions, and to the point I think you're making, thousands upon thousands of leadership books and webinars and classes. And from my perspective, a lot of them are riddled in ambiguity and subjectivity. So you could sit through an 8 hour leadership class and then still be like, okay, now what? Like what? Okay, I agree with everything that was said, but I'm still not sure from an actionable perspective, what do I need to do Monday morning? Um, so I agree with a lot of the things that you just said. As you know, I'm a huge proponent of servant leadership, and servant leadership is based on the 8 behaviors of agape love, having patience, showing kindness, humility, respect. There's 8 of them. And then I really try to operationalize leadership. So with each of those 8, these are the 5 to 10 tactical, granular things that I need my leaders to do to be the best versions of themselves. And then more importantly, to make their teams the best versions of themselves. So I try to get rid of the ambiguity and the subjectivity of leadership. Now, you just unpacked a lot of really good information. Leaders need to have crystal clear expectations, or what I call the rules of the house. So the rules of my house are the core values. So are your core values listed and well defined? The vision or the purpose of the organization. Why do we exist? And if the reason you exist is to make money, so be it, but you need to be clear about that. My vision and purpose is a little bit different than that. What are the specific roles and responsibilities of each person in each seat? So to use the right person, right seat analogy that you kind of unpacked. And then the 4th rule of the house for us is, if it's a leader, are they well adept at the servant leadership principles? Once you have laid out the rules of the house or the expectations, I think it's extremely easy to then tell people if they're winning or not. So I can go to any one of my leaders and say, okay, here are the rules of the house. Here's what we're expecting of you. And you're either killing it, so I can celebrate it with them, or you're not. There's a gap. There's a negative gap between what I expect of you and where you're currently at. Now, if they're a good core value fit, then I'm going to spend a lot of time and energy coaching them up to minimize that gap so they can become the best version of themselves. If they're not a good core value fit and they're kind of rolling their eyes and, hey, I'm doing the best I can and whatever, then they're probably not going to be on my team very long. Probably going to free up their future, because I need someone in that seat that understands what my rules of the house are and are striving to attain those.
That's the nicest way I've ever heard anyone say, I'm going to fire you. Free up their future.
I'm going to free up their future. I'm going to weed my garden.
No, but I love it. I do. I think that's awesome. So I appreciate that definition.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.